Hello and welcome to Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'm your host, Karen Seltz, also known as the Uncensored Self-Love Coach. So happy that you're here with me today. We are going to talk about living without expectations. And what I've learned in my journey is anytime I have an expectation, I'm either disappointed because most of the time people don't read my mind. I don't know why they didn't get the memo, but most of the time I'm disappointed because people don't do what I think they should do or what I expect them to do. Or it would be nice if everybody operated the way I did, right? That kind of thinking. Or if they do what I expect them to, I'm like, well, yeah, they should have done that. And I'm just not disappointed. So I'm not excited. I'm not filled with gratitude. I'm not grateful. I'm not happy. I'm just like, yeah, that's what they should do. So I've learned over the years, I have this mentor in the leadership program that I've coached in for a long time named Kalmin. And I love this saying. She says, expectations are premeditated resentments. And if you really think about that, it's so true. Anytime I'm filled with resentment, it's because someone didn't meet my expectation that they didn't even know about. So it's kind of hilarious when you break it down. So stick with me. We're going to dive into this whole subject. If you are new to me, there's really only three things that you need to know. The first thing is that if you have a deeper calling that you haven't quite stepped into all the way yet, and it keeps like tapping you on the shoulder, just know I have been there. I resisted my calling for a very long time. I hid, I played small, I pretended I didn't know what it was. So I am so happy that you're here with me, and I'm happy to support you on your journey. The second thing that you need to know about me is I consider my greatest superpower to be that of a divine mirror. And what I mean by that is I have the ability to see people through the eyes of the divine, through God, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it, and to reflect back to them who they really are in their gifts and their talents, and using all of that and getting rid of all the limiting beliefs, because those are really illusions, and reflect their gifts, their talents, their greatness back to them until they see it for themselves. And the third thing that you need to know is that I am uncensored in my approach. So whatever comes in for you, the audience, I will not censor it. So what I mean by comes in is like from the divine. When I get those downloads, I just put them out there. And sometimes that includes a little swearing. So you never know what's going to come. It's kind of fun though. I like to be an empty channel. So I'm just get my opinion, my judgments out of the way so that I can just channel for you. So let's talk about expectations. I love this so much. I was just remembering a time, well, recently, I'm in a pretty new romantic relationship, and we didn't talk about how often we were going to see each other or what the expectation was when we did see each other, what would happen in between, like how often did we communicate. And that stuff is, it's not that easy to navigate for a lot of people because, in my case, I don't want to look insecure. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look needy. So I was just kind of brushing it under the rug. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm cool. I'm cool. I can see you whenever. You don't have to text me. And, I didn't say these things, but this was going on in my head. But then there was this part of me that wanted him to text me and wanted him to want to see me. And that part was not getting the expectations met. So then I start to get like kind of pissy and tantrumy because I'm building up resentments. Because why? I'm making it all about me, and I am reinforcing the beliefs that I have about myself. And they come up for me usually in romantic relationships. It's like where my biggest growth opportunities are always there. They always have been. And so I like being in relationships. I find it fun, and I find it, for me, a fast track to growth. So we had this, this communication where I got a little, it was just in text, but I got a little, and I didn't think that it showed through that I was like that. But it turns out this guy is an empath. So he picked up all my emotion. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Trying to play stupid that I didn't mean it that way. And I'm like, I didn't even go there. I'm like, you know what? I acknowledged that I was feeling empty and I wanted you to fill that void for me. I have this other thing. I've been in transition in my life in this other area. And I felt needy and I wanted you to fill that need. But I had this conversation with him from a place of 100% responsibility because I got to say to him, you didn't do anything wrong. You did nothing wrong. It was all my expectations and what I wanted and the feeling that I was lacking something. And I wanted you to fill that. Well, that created a new sense of trust for us because how many women or men, for that matter, will go into a relationship like that and say, you know what, you didn't do anything wrong. Instead of blaming our partner and saying, oh, you did this to me. Why didn't you do this? Why? Great question. I'm going to go into that in a second. I came from a place of, wow, I can see myself. Thank you for allowing me the space to explore this and being 100% responsible for my emotions, my needs, my expectations. So what I was saying is it created this place of trust. He's like, wow, I've never seen anybody approach things that way or to show up that way, to be that responsible and not blame me. I'm like, well, that's how I usually am. I just got a little off kilter. Happens. So that's another thing that's available to you when you're able to release expectations and really look at how is that me? How is it me that's showing up in the face of the other person? So that was kind of fun. That was a fun and interesting situation. So moving along, we have now had like a really clean dialogue where we're able to be very transparent with each other, very vulnerable, and to release those expectations or to at least acknowledge them. Like, oh, I had an expectation that I didn't let you know about, and this is what happened as a result. So moving along. So there's this story of a beggar. And every day, this man puts some coins in the beggar's hat or whatever the beggar's collecting in. And one day, the man doesn't put anything in there. And the beggar says, what's going on? Every day for the last year, you've put the same amount of money in. And the man realized at that point that this was a perfect opportunity for a lesson for the beggar. So he says, I've put money in there every day for a year. And I've noticed the last 6 months that you have not yet once said thank you. You've come to expect that I put money in there every day. And your gratitude for it is gone. And the beggar really thought about that. He's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's true. So he was able to reframe it in a way that the beggar could see that he came to even expect that, and he was no longer grateful. And that's what it's like every time we have an expectation and somebody meets it, we're like, oh, okay, I'm not disappointed. So that's what the beggar became accustomed to. He wasn't disappointed because the man put the money in the thing. And when he didn't, he was disappointed, right? And then he would build up a resentment. So it's great to look at what are the things that you're taking for granted in your life? What are the things you've come to expect? Even something as simple as decency. You're merging onto a highway and somebody lets you in or doesn't let you in. Do you get annoyed? Do you get pissed off if they don't let you in? Or do you let it go? You're like, okay. And that's where I'll get triggered, is like I'll have an expectation that people abide by the same rules of society that I do. And I get to check myself like, okay, I don't know what's going on for that person. And I get to be present. So when we are able to release any expectations other than safety, like that someone's not going to beat you. I mean, things like that, you're safe to have those, right? But other expectations, like someone's going to show up this way for me at this time, and it has to be exactly like this. We're just setting ourselves up for failure or for disappointment and resentment. what's it like when you can live in the present moment with no expectation of anything? Well, I'll tell you, when you do it, you are constantly surprised and delighted. And I'll give you another example. So the guy that I'm dating, I picked him up at the airport a couple of weeks ago, and I met him at the escalator right where he came off the plane, and he was so surprised. He was so delighted. He's like, no one's ever picked me up there before. They always wait outside. Well, I didn't tell him ahead of time just in case I had an issue, so that he could experience this surprise and delight. So it's things like that, like if he had had an expectation that I was there and I met him at the curb, he would have been disappointed. But he didn't have an expectation. So he had the ability to be surprised and delighted. And guess what? The only way as human beings that we learn lessons is through surprise or through pain. So, how would you rather learn your lessons? You get to choose 100% of the time. I choose now to be surprised and delighted, like, oh, this is awesome. I love this. And it's really fun to live that way and just show up that way. If you have expectations, you can never be surprised, at least not in a good way. You can be surprised like, oh, crap, they didn't show up for me, or this check didn't come in the mail, whatever it is. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have a vision, because you get to have a vision about what you want in life, what you want to experience, what you want your business to look like, what you want your relationships to look like. What I say and how to differentiate that is, what do you want to experience? What feelings? What ways of being do you get to show up in? And what ways of being do you want those around you to show up in? Because there is no difference. There's no difference between you and what you see out here. It's all the same. Every single thing that you see is a part of you. It's impossible to see anything outside of yourself. And this is a really fun lesson to get. Not really. It's not fun at all. But I was talking today with someone about my ex-husband, and I'm like, this is the hardest one for me to get, to see that he is me. And when he shows up a certain way, I get to look at myself and say, how is that me? How is that me? Because until I really see it and am responsible for it, I'll continue to create that lesson. So it's going to keep coming. So it is worth it to do the work. If somebody triggers you, that is your greatest teacher. It's not the guru that's all woke and, enlightened. That person, has great things to teach you, but it's the person that pisses you off, that gets under your skin. And you're like, you son of a, that is your greatest teacher right there. When you can see that that is a reflection of you, the parts of you that are unhealed, that is the stuff that's ready to be healed. And until you bring that back to you, until you fully embrace all the stuff that you made up the story is unlovable in anybody else, we will continue to reject that stuff. Like for me, for years, it was selfish. If someone called me selfish, I was like, I'm melting, like, oh, it burns. Because my mom, that was her biggest insult. If she called me selfish, that I took it to mean like, you are not worthy of anything. All you think about is yourself and nobody else, and you don't deserve to take up space. That's what I heard when she called me selfish. So you can imagine then that I would go through life very triggered by that word. And it took a long time for me to realize, without me embracing my selfish parts, the parts that wanted what she wanted when she wanted it, then I couldn't be generous. Because unless I took time for myself, like self-care or time to meditate, time to pray, time to regroup, to sleep, to recharge, I had nothing to give. And when my kids were little, if I've always like pretty much been single, I separated from their father when they were 3 and 5. So their thing was like, if I was cranky, they'd be like, Mom, did you meditate today? And I'm like, no. They would constantly bust me because they knew that if I didn't take time to recharge, I was reactive. So you get to look at what is it for you that helps you recharge and come back home to yourself. And when I do those practices, like meditation, for example, it's not so hard for me when people say you're selfish. I'd be like, yeah, I am. I am that because I'm everything. I'm also a bitch. I'm also generous. I'm also powerful. I'm also loving and compassionate because I'm everything. And so are you. So anytime someone calls you anything, you'd be like, yeah, yep, that's true because it is. And that's the part about being holistic beings is we all have every single characteristic inside of us. How much energy do we spend trying to reject those and say, nope, that's not me. That's that person, that one over there. Like, you know, you can just have fun with it. Yep, there I go. You know, like, yep, I'm selfish. Yeah. And I'm still lovable. No matter how selfish I am, no matter what a bitch I am, I'm still lovable no matter what. That is a lesson that we all get to get. Like there is not a single thing you can do to make yourself any less lovable or worthy. And there's not a single thing you can do to make yourself any more lovable and worthy. You are just plain lovable and worthy. You don't have to work for it. You can't work for it. You can't change it ever. And when I got that lesson, what a relief. I stopped trying to earn love as much. You know, we still always fall into our traps, but I stopped being a human doing and I started getting into my being, like, and asking myself, like, what do I want? What do I want right now? Instead of worrying about pleasing everybody else so they wouldn't leave me. So I digress. Going back to expectations, we also have them of ourselves. Now, some of the people I've coached over the last year are so hard on themselves. They have these standards for themselves that are simply unattainable, these standards of perfection. And if anything is less than perfect, say they're an entrepreneur, they won't put it out there until it's perfect. And I'm like, well, you're going to be like 100 years old before you put anything out there. Like, good luck, friend. Like, it's not attainable. And the other thing about perfection is it's not relatable. Who is perfect? Like nobody. Who can relate to that? So I love this thing like of letting yourself off the hook, being gentle with yourself, saying my best is good enough and putting it out there. And it's fun to play with because it increases your capacity for courage and your ability to be courageous on a regular basis. So I had a mom that I would hear comments like, you're going out looking like that, or you really need to go on a diet. There were all these things about my looks. So for many, many years, I wouldn't go out of the house unless I looked decent, unless my clothes matched, unless my face was made up, my hair was done. And it's all a mask. It's a mask. It's not who I am. I'm not made up all the time. I don't look good all the time. My clothes don't match. And so letting that go gave me so much freedom. And I just went camping over the weekend with the guy I'm dating, right? Like, and it's a new relationship. And something miraculous happened. I was gone for, like, I was covered in dust. My feet were black. I looked homeless. I did not look in the mirror the entire time. That's never happened in my entire life where I did not look in the mirror. And it didn't occur to me until I got home. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is some serious self-acceptance for me, like coming from that place where, are you going to go out looking like that? Like, I have no idea what I look like. I don't really want to know. Luckily, there weren't any pictures. So, but it's like acknowledging my growth. And we get to do that at every step of the way. And with people I coach, I'm like, well, think about when you started coaching, how perfect everything had to be, for example, before you put it out there. Look at you now doing lives. Lives are scary because you can mess up at any time. and there are people that are seeing it. So it's just noticing like your progression, noticing your progress, and giving yourself a pat on the back. Like, oh my gosh, look how far I've come. Because we are trained as human beings to look at the deficit, to look at what we're not doing, to look at other people and say, well, I'm not there yet, so I'm not good enough, whatever, to look down on ourselves. So when we can notice our progress and say, like, I didn't think that I would ever get to a place like that, where I could not look in the mirror for several days. That's like, that is beyond my comprehension. But I love it. And it makes me really happy. And the guy didn't reject me. So it all worked out so far. So where are those places in your life where you're holding yourself to an impossible standard, setting these expectations for yourself that you can't possibly succeed? So look at those. And where can you give yourself some grace? Where can you be gentle with yourself? Where can you talk to your inner child and say, hey, you did really well. Look how far you've come. Look at what you did do. Instead of looking at what you didn't do or what you did wrong, look at what you did well. Look at what worked. And if you could do it objectively, like when you're looking at something from a higher perspective and like it's not even you, when you can depersonalize it, that makes it a lot easier to be objective with your results that you're creating. And you can say, well, this worked and this didn't work. So next time I'm gonna keep this part that worked and I'm gonna add this instead, or I'm gonna try this. Let's play. What if you looked at it like a scientist, like your life was an experiment and you weren't attached to the results? You didn't have an expectation of what the results were gonna be. What would life be like? I tell you, it's freeing and you're going to be delighted and surprised a lot, which is fun. And I talked earlier about how we learn lessons. And one of the things I know is, as a soul, for me, I have a certain lessons that I'm here to learn. And I can either have fun and laugh through them, or I can resist them and I can like say, oh gosh, no, I don't want that lesson. I don't want that one. It doesn't matter. I'm going to learn it either way. I personally would rather have fun with it. I personally would rather say, okay, yep, I screwed that up. Yep, it was me. I farted, whatever it is, like just whatever it is, like who cares? Have fun with it and be authentic. And when we are 100% present, we don't really have expectations. We're just in the moment. And we don't have expectations. What are we apt to experience? Surprise and delight, which is what we want. So my invitation to you is to really look at, especially your primary relationships, your spouse, your children, those are big ones, your parents, your coworkers, your boss, your subordinates, and look at your expectations. Look at those expectations and think, what would it be like for you and for the other person in the relationship if you released those, if you allowed that person to be who they are and to make mistakes, especially if you're talking about your children. What would it be like for them to be allowed to learn from their own mistakes? Instead of hearing, oh, don't do that, you're going to do this, or this might happen. If you make this mistake, this might happen. And then they're like in this box and they learn to not take risks. Same with your employees. Like there are a lot of corporate cultures that are risk averse. People are afraid to make mistakes, so they don't try new things, and it stifles innovation and creativity. Same thing happens with your children. So my invitation is to release your expectations and let people be. Release your expectations of yourself and let yourself be. Let yourself be free to screw up and screw up with passion, because that's like, why not? This is your life that you have right now. This is it. This is it. Have fun with it. Be passionate, be courageous. Do something that scares you. So my invitation is, if you're watching this Pick one thing right now that scares you and commit to doing it within the next 24 hours. And then email me, let me know how it went. Karen at KarenSeltz.com. Karen at KarenSeltz.com. Email me, let me know. Even if you're really embarrassed, like, oh my gosh, I did this thing, it was so embarrassing. It's fun. It's fun when you're able to share it with other people. It takes the punch in the stomach out of it. So one thing that I'm offering to people that watch this show is a free possibilities call with me. And the reason I'm doing that is, like I mentioned in the beginning, I've been on this journey, and for such a long time I played small and I pretended like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I pretended like I didn't know what my calling was, and perfection kept me stuck. So during these possibilities calls, I am committed to getting you unstuck and to finding out where it is that you really want to go, what's been stopping you, why it's important to you to even do it in the beginning and to begin with. Why do you want it? What would it do for you if you had it? And we will go through, and we'll uncover some things and we'll develop a plan. And the reason I'm offering that to you is because I know what it's like to be stuck. I know what it's like to feel hopeless. I know what it's like to feel like I'm going to be stuck in this dead end job for the next 20 years. And I don't want that for you. Whatever it is, like a job, a relationship, a life situation, let's dive into it. So if you know I'm talking to you and you want to book a call with me, it's a 45-minute call. Just go to connectwithkaren.us and it will take you directly to my personal calendar, and we'll hop on a call within the next few days and we'll dive in. We'll have some fun because that's my personality. It won't be too serious, I promise. So connectwithkaren.us and we'll hop on a call. I thank you so much for watching. I had great expectations that you would be here live. Just kidding. And you did not disappoint me. I was surprised and delighted as always. So thank you for watching Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I will see you back here next week.